Okay, so let's start. As you can see, the title of the lecture is Sarajevo, Yerushalayim Haktana, or in Ladino, the language of the local Jews, it would be Chico Yerushalayim, small Jerusalem. Now it didn't become small Jerusalem immediately. It took some time, but basically in the Balkan area there were Jewish communities since the times of St. Paul the Apostle, but that's more in the southern part of the Balkans. In these parts, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, for example, there were no Jews before the expulsion from Spain in 1492. So there was no a local Byzantine, but I don't like using that name. There was no local Romaniotti. That's the way we call Byzantine Jews. There was no local Romaniotti community. So the Jews came. Obviously, Sarajevo is not on the seaside, so it's not a port city. So the Jews didn't come straight from Spain to Sarajevo. So basically, the community of Sarajevo, which is the biggest and the oldest in Bosnia, started developing as a satellite of a Salonika community. In other words, Jews came from Spain to the city ports in the Ottoman Empire. The closest city port to here was the one in Salonika, and then first Jews that came to Sarajevo, it was not immediately the first years in the aftermath of the expulsion, but rather a few decades later, when they started developing merchant relations within the peninsula. So Jews were basically coming to Sarajevo for a few months period at the beginning. They would come from Salonika with, let's say, they would come after Pesach with their, let's call it spring-summer merchandise. They would be selling it here until the late summer, then they would go back to Salonika, where they would again spend the holidays, and then they would come with their winter merchandise and be here until beginning of the spring, when they would return to Salonika to spend Pesach with their families. Then eventually some of these people brought also their families with them. Still, however, they were traveling. And then at one point in time, the Vali of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bosnia had special status within the Ottoman Empire, right? Because it was the northest, things kept changing. So in 17th century, for example, the Ottoman Empire at its peak was all the way up to Vienna. But later, Bosnia becomes the most northern European, the most northern province of the Ottoman Empire on the European soil, right? So that's what makes it special, because it's a frontier, right? And every empire is protected exactly on those places, because in the heart of the empire it's easier to protect yourself than on the borders. And this was the border against the powerful enemy, the Christian West, Christian Europe, right? So Bosnia had a special status. In any case, Bosnian Vezir, or the Vali of Bosnia, which, interestingly enough, was not in Sarajevo, but rather in Travnik, a small city where the seat of the Vezir was located. So he decided that Jews should either leave or stay, because it was not good for the economy that Jews kept coming and leaving and coming and leaving. So he said, we see you guys as important part of our economy, but you have to stay. If you don't, then just go and don't return. And then the first community was basically organized by force. There was a Han called Sijavush Pashina Daira. Han, you know what's Han, okay? How do you say? There's no English word for Han. Yeah. Okay. So there was a Han called Sijavush Pashina Daira, and first Jews settled there, and they were allowed also to establish a synagogue there, and we will see into what that synagogue is developed later. That's basically the oldest synagogue of Sarajevo, and we will see it today on our way. So throughout the 16th century, with the establishment of the first community, Sarajevo still functions as a satellite of Salonika. Now, how do you know, in the Jewish world, how do you know if a certain community is important or not?
Cemetery.
No. No.
The rabbis.
Rabbis, exactly. If the community imports rabbis, it's not important community. If the community exports rabbis, it's important community. And it will very easily. If you have a yeshiva, you produce more rabbis than you need. Then you export them. Once you export them, they still stay loyal to the yeshiva and they turn to their rabbis for guiding or for guidance. So that community or that yeshiva which they were coming from or which they came from becomes the center of the Jewish life in that part of the world and somehow influences all other communities become its satellites because the rabbis of those other communities turn up to the central community. So basically, Sarajevo became the center of the Northern Balkans, and the communities surrounding it were actually looking up to Sarajevo Yeshiva with the establishment of Rabbi Pardo's Yeshiva. Now, family Pardo, they left Spain in 1492, they came to Salonika, they had their connections with Amsterdam community and with Western Sephardim, and then some of them moved up to the north in the Balkans. So his father was Rabbi Yaakov Pardo, was coming from this old rabbinical family, and they were established in Sarajevo, then they moved to Ragusa, and Rabbi Yaakov Pardo dies. So his widow stays on her own, and Rabbi Yaakov Delirius from Venezia sends a letter, and he says it's totally intolerable that the son of such an important rabbi would stay in such a small community without proper Jewish learning. So I'm ready to give him how would you call it? Scholarship, we would call it today, right? So he gave him a place at his home, and he also financed his learning. That's how Rabbi David Pardo went to Italy, and then he returned from there with Italian approach to Judaism, which is different than Ashkenazi and which is different than Sephardic. The Italian Jews treated all different codices of Jewish law separately, and they learned them separately. Unlike the Ashkenazi, who learned mostly Talmud and everything via Talmud or through the lenses of the Talmud, right? Now the Italians learned Mishnah on its own, Tosefta on its own. So Rabbi Pardo, when he came back to the Balkans, he actually started writing commentaries the Italian way. Commentary on Mishnah, commentary on Hasdei David, and so on. Commentary on Tosafot, which is called Hasdei David. So what's today Rashi for the Babylonian Talmud, in other words, a commentary that everybody consults if they want to understand, that's what Rabbi David Pardo's commentary on Tosafot is. He wrote a book called Hasdei David, and it's today considered to be Rashi for Tosafot. In other words, the commentary which you can't not consult. So, this guy is now back from Italy and he's looking for a job. And he's young rabbi, and nobody still knows that he, later on, you will not even have to say his entire name, you will say Rataf, Rabbi David Pardo, and that's enough for the world of Jewish learning. So, as a young guy, he goes to smaller communities first, because Sarajevo, for him, was, the dream he can't make it. So he comes to Split, and we will get there. So I'm basically today making introduction to our entire trip together. So this guy comes from Venezia, he gets off the boat in the Split, and there were people over there looking at a marvelous divine deed, sheep, which had two sets of external sexual organs. So there were two Jews over there, they look at him, he's dressed as a rabbi, so they tell him, can you make a shechita of this kind of sheep, and if you can do it with beracha. And then he says the following: "And I was just off the boat, and my books were not with me. So I answered them haphazardly and told them whatever I remembered on the spot." And then you have 40 pages elaborated answer. If you are worried and you really need to know, the halakha answer is you do the shechita, but you don't bless. Because double set of external sexual organs might imply that they are also internal. And if they are internal, then it's unfitting for you. So, if we don't know whether they are, so you can still make the shechita, but you don't do the blessing over the shechita, because even without the blessing, it's still shechted properly, but you didn't mention divine name in vain. In any case, over there, he discovers that there is a Rabbi, Rabbi Abraham Papo, in Split, and that the community is too small to support 2 rabbis. He moves to Belgrade. Then in Belgrade, he discovers that there is no rabbi in Belgrade, because a famous rabbi on his way from Salonika was asked by the president of the Jewish community to become the rabbi. He said that I'm on my way to Amsterdam. The president of the Jewish community told him, "Listen, you have a son, I have a daughter, let them marry, and then besides that, you can rule." We don't have that many questions. You can rule us from Amsterdam. It's easier for the president of the community. It's easier for the rabbi. So this rabbi was in Amsterdam, and whenever they had questions, they asked him, and immediately in 2 months they would get their answer. And meanwhile, obviously, the president could do whatever he wanted, because the rabbi was anyways his father-in-law. So Rabbi David Pardo gets to Belgrade, and he's trying really hard to impress the community. He gives them all the answers they need on spot. And then somebody from the board of the community tells him there is a problem. We don't have enough money even for this rabbi in Amsterdam, and now we are paying him. We can't afford to have additional rabbi. And then he comes to Sarajevo, where he had family, as I said previously, and interestingly enough, even though he's very young, he's recognized for his learning, and Rabbi Machoro died at the moment, one of the famous rabbis in Sarajevo. So Rabbi David Pardo was slowly but surely, he entered the business. And then what happens is he establishes yeshiva. And in that yeshiva, he had, first of all, his own 3 sons, Rabbi Abraham Pardo, Rabbi Yaakov Pardo, actually Yaakov was the firstborn, called after his father, and then Isaac, and then Abraham, and also 2 other famous rabbis, Rabbi Abraham Penso, and Rabbi Shabbatai Ventura, and Rabbi Ben-Zion Pinto. So all of these became rabbis in the surrounding, later, they became rabbis in the surrounding communities. So his son, Yaakov Pardo, was the rabbi of Dubrovnik. And his son, Isaac Pardo, stayed here in Sarajevo. And Abraham Pence, and so on. So you get the picture. This is the moment when Sarajevo actually becomes the center of Jewish life in the northern Balkans. We are speaking of 18th century. And then big, not only the small communities, which is understandable, in the rest of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also communities like Belgrade and Split and Dubrovnik. They are all populated by the rabbis who graduated from the Sarajevo Yeshiva. Okay. Now, the Jews, when they came to Sarajevo, they were already de-Hispanized, clothing wisely. De-Hispanized.
Hispanic.
Yeah. So that means they already dressed the Ottoman way. Probably the first generation, which only came off the boat from Spain, they were still dressing the Spanish way. But when the Jews came to Sarajevo, it was already a few decades after they established themselves in the Ottoman Empire. So they were just wearing what the other Ottoman Sephardic Jews were wearing, which means that female dress still has some attachment to medieval Spanish ways, but the male dress was totally local Ottoman Oriental. Now, most of the, it's not even overwhelming majority, all the Jews who came at that time, in 16th century, were Sephardic. So in the subsequent centuries, 17 and 18 and even the beginning of 19th century, the Ashkenazim who came into the community, they would assimilate within the community. But Sephardim were not, how did I put it? Nicely? Okay. They were not extremely capable of pronouncing Ashkenazi names. So any person coming from Ashkenazi background would simply be called Ashkenazi. They would call him up to the Torah and they would say, well, okay, so now you have to explain things. You know how in Ashkenazi world you are called up to Torah by your name and your father's name and nobody mentions your second name? Well, that's because the Ashkenazim never had the conversal problem. The Sephardim, which had conversal problem, are very careful to call people to Sefer Torah with their name and second name. Because father's name could always be Ricardo or anything, and they were trying not to undermine anybody. So basically it's exclusive Sephardic custom to call people up to Torah with their name, without father's name, and their second name. So, as I said, we don't have written testimonies about this, but we are trying to explain this as a product of expulsion from Spain. Since so many conversos were coming and rejoining these communities, they were taking Hebrew names, and they always had Hebrew family names or Jewish family names, but their fathers' names could just be whatever. And then they were called with what's 100% kasher, which is personal name of a person who returned to Judaism, and the family name which was always Jewish. So in any case, when a Ashkenazi would come up to Torah, they would tell him what's your name, and he would say his name and his father's name, and they would say, no, your family name. And then he would say, Goldfarb. And they would say, Ya'aleh, Yitzchak, Ashkenazi. So, today, interestingly enough, anybody called Ashkenazi is not Ashkenazi, right? Why? Because in an Ashkenazi community, everybody is Ashkenazi, so you don't pick one guy and call him Ashkenazi. But Ashkenazi are all those people whose forefathers 200 or 300 years ago came and joined one of the Sephardic communities, and then married with local girl and started speaking local Jewish language, which usually was Ladino, and still they were called Ashkenazi until this day. So in Sarajevo, for example, we also have a street called the Brothers Eskenazi. The Sephardim of Bosnia and Herzegovina started pronouncing Shin as Sh quite lately, or quite late. But basically in 16th, 17th and 18th century it was still S. And that's why you see that all Hebraisms which were incorporated into Ladino, Shin is pronounced as S. Right? And then, yes, and then even in names, right? So later, when they met with the Ashkenazim, the guys started pronouncing Shin as Sh, but ladies stick to S. So you can make a differentiation that's called genderlect. Then, yeah, within one dialect of Ladino, there are three genderlects. No, two genderlects, right? Like females and males, and then within the male genderlect, you have the ways of speaking of rabbis and the ways of speaking of common people. So, anyways, the ladies pronounced most of the things with S, and all the names were with S. So it's not Shimshon, it's Simson, it's not Shlomo. Of course, it's not Shlomo, that's the Ashkenazi pronunciation, but it's Salomo, right? Or, give me another one. Salom, of course, the famous family here, one of the famous family names is Salom, not Shalom. Okay. So, the only exception to the rule that I'm aware of is Moshe. Moshe is pronounced with Sh. Always there is no Moshe. And even all the derivations from Moshe, like Mushon, Moshiko, and that kind of stuff, it's all always with Sh. So let's now start looking at, this is Bosnia and Herzegovina presently. So you can see today Bosnia and Herzegovina is basically confederation. You have Federation Croat Muslim, that's the way they called it before, Croat Muslim Federation, and then you have Republic of Srpska, and then you have DC. So you can also imagine immediately who imposed the peace agreement. Washington DC, right? So you have Brčko DC, Brčko district. It was imposed by the Americans with an American solution, So in order to prevent Republika Srpska leaving Bosnia and Herzegovina, there is territorial discontinuation over here with Brčko DC, Brčko district. So this is the way Bosnia and Herzegovina looks today. Now they say that, even and fair, right? So they say that all even world wars start in Bosnia. The First World War started after the Archduke of the Austro-Hungarian Empire was assassinated here. We will see the place. It's 2 minutes from our hotel. And this is the famous Sarajevo Haggadah. So Sarajevo is famous for world wars, and it's famous for its Haggadah. And Shalom will be speaking a lot about this medieval masterpiece. So I will skip through these. But Sarajevo is also known for its Olympic Games. And now we are coming to a person whose name you will be hearing all the time during our stay in Sarajevo. Gazi Husrev Bek. Gazi means hero, and this title was added to people who were fighting in jihad and conquering new territories for the Ottoman Empire. His personal name was Husrev, and he was a bey. So Gazi Husrev Bey. Bey in Hebrew. In Turkish. Bey is a landlord. Okay, one type of landlord. So it's just like saying Earl. Not Earl Grey, but without Grey. Okay. So Gazi Husrev Bek was one of
B-E-H or B-E-Y?
B-E-Y.
And Husrev, how do you spell it?
Husrev. You spell it H-U-S-R-E-F. H-U-S-R-E-F. Okay. So Gazi Husrev Bek was, he was not the first, but he was one of the subsequent rulers of Sarajevo, and he established Sarajevo as an Islamic city with all public institutions needed in an Islamic city. Ottoman Empire was a Muslim state, or was an Islamic state, and basically everything was governed by religion and religious sentiments. So there was a small city before the Ottoman conquest of Bosnia, which was called Vrh Bosna, and it was up the hill. And then basically the city of Sarajevo, the way we know it today, developed during the Ottoman rule. That's why the name of the city, the very name of the city, is Ottoman. It's not a Slavic name. Saray in Turkish means a castle. And then one of the interpretations, why do you have Evo, not only Saray, because in Turkish, Sarajevo is not called Sarajevo. In Turkish, it's called Saray Bosna, which means the castle of Bosnia. Why? Because in the huge Ottoman Empire, there are many places called Saray. Right? So this Saray is different than all other Sarays because it's Saray in Bosnia. So they call it Saray Bosna. But in Bosnian, Serbian, Croatian, and Montenegrin, you call it Sarajevo. So where does the Evo comes from? Well, you can just easily say that it's a Slavic morphological addition to the name. To any language, when it incorporates words from other languages, it adds certain morphemes to make it clear whether this is feminine or female or known or so on. In any case, this guy establishes the main Sarajevo mosque, who is called after him, the Gazi Husrev Bek's mosque. He establishes hammam, a Turkish bath. He establishes medresa, which is a school for religious leadership. And we will see today afternoon, basically he establishes two schools, but from the very architecture you can see where his heart lies. Because there are two schools, one is for exoteric teachings and the other one is for esoteric teachings, and the school for esoteric teachings is higher. So basically, even architectonically, he was conveying a message that learning, let me speak Jewishly, learning Halacha is necessary, but learning Kabbalah or learning mysticism is on higher level. So he established one school for imams, or for the people of the Islamic law, and another school for Islamic mystics. And then he also established a tekke, which usually they translate it into English as a Christian language, they translate it as convent, a convent of Islamic mystics. But it's not really convent because most of the people don't necessarily live there, so it's not a monastic community. So he belonged to the Helveti order within the Sufi world. I know that too many words are, many of you are unfamiliar with many of these words, but whatever. It's complicated. Let's say Sunni Islam and Shia Islam, right? So the Ottoman Empire belongs to the Sunni world. Now the Sunni world is divided halakhically into four different schools. Okay? So this part of the Ottoman Empire belongs to the Hanefi school of thought. And then within the Ottoman Islam, and especially within the Hanefi school of thought, there is a lot of place for Islamic mysticism, which is also linking the Sunni Hanefi Islam to the Shiites because of the very specific content of Sufi understanding of the world. In any case, Ottoman Empire was very mystic oriented. Most of the sultans belonged to at least one of the orders, of the Sufi orders. So the founder of Islamic city of Sarajevo, the guy who established all public institutions needed in an Islamic city, including also imaret, which means kitchen for the poor, right? Because a city cannot call itself a city if it doesn't take care of the poor. That's the difference between a village and a city, because in village you don't have need for institutions. The community is small enough for people to care about each other. The city, you need to have a place where the poor people will be taken care of. So, in any case, this is the old synagogue, established in 1581. The way it presently looks is not necessarily from the 16th century, because it was burned in fires, not on purpose, right? But there were different fires in Sarajevo at different times, so it was burned many times and renewed many times, so we don't know for sure how it looked like in 16th century. In any case, you can see something very similar, and this is why I insisted that we should also go to the Serbian Orthodox Church, because we are trying to understand the way the non-Muslim minorities are functioning without the Ottoman world. So this is the Serbian Orthodox Church, and obviously the tower, the bell tower, was added only after the Ottoman occupation. Before, there wasn't no such a thing, because it would hurt Islamic feelings. The noise produced by the bells was not tolerated in the Ottoman Empire. Usually the crosses were removed, so basically churches looked like big storage houses, because they didn't have crosses and they didn't have bell towers. And so they used a piece of wood called simandro to call the faithful to prayer. So what I want you to pay attention to, that it is how from the outside the Serbian Orthodox Church and the synagogue look similarly, right? So basically, So basically, we can say that. Let me put it this way: Islam understood itself as Windows 7, and then Judaism was DOS. DOS. And Christianity was Windows 3.14 with icons. So Islam understood the world in a way where you don't have to actively seek destruction of Judaism and Christianity, because these religions were revealed by God. On the other side, however, you don't let those communities strive or develop, because there is an upgrade, which is Islam. So Islam believed in the first century, when the Islamic outlook towards the world was established, they believed actually that Christianity and Judaism will eventually die out, and you don't need to push them to extinction. So that's how they established what's called Omar's Pact. Omar's Pact means, after the Arab conquest of Jerusalem, that means no new churches, no new synagogues. But the communities can keep the churches and synagogues which they have, but even reparation of a synagogue and church goes against the Islamic understanding of the ways things should be. Because if the church goes down, you should take the clue and understand that it's about time for you to convert to Islam. Now, so basically, to use the metaphor which I said previously, the idea of Islam was, let's say you have a problem with your computer. You call support. You say, hi, I have a problem. They say, which operating system you are using? And you say, DOS. They say, DOS? For God's sake, nobody uses DOS today. No, we have Windows 7. And you say, but this is a genuine program. I bought it from you. And they say, we know, but we are not giving support for that program. What we can give you is to acquire or to buy Windows 7 for a lesser price. So that's the idea. They wanted everybody gradually, slowly to convert to Islam. However, though, Ottoman Empire was also a practical and pragmatical empire, and Jews were importing into the Ottoman Empire professions that the empire either didn't have or didn't have developed to the level on which they were in Spain, or didn't have at least enough people. And besides that, also Jews who could travel between the Christian and Islamic world were necessary for economic cooperation. Not too many Muslims traveled to non-Islamic world, and obviously there was exchange of goods. So they needed Jewish merchants, but they also need Jewish professional men. Now, you know that if you let Jews come from Spain to the Ottoman Empire, you also have to let them have synagogues, right? Because they can't live without synagogues. But how can you let them build new synagogues if, according to the Omar's Pact, there is no place for new synagogues? Only old synagogues can be kept. So this developed a very grey area in which the Jews had to lie to Muslims which wanted to be lied to, how there was an old synagogue which existed there and they are now only repairing it, and then the Muslims were kind of, yeah, but you know that we know that you are lying, so so with how many zeros you write the word old synagogue. So basically this is the way the things function, and Jews were establishing new synagogues, dozens, in cities like Istanbul, dozens of them. So, the Jews of entire Ottoman Empire, they understood that they need to keep low profile. So you will see, this is the synagogue from the inside, and it looks magnificent. And if you look at it from the outside, it looks like a big storage house. So just like, this is the same effect you have in Jerusalem in poor Sephardic synagogues. If you pop in the Jewish old city, or in the Jewish quarter of the old city, if you pass by them, you don't see anything special. From the outside, they look like whatever, 2.5 meters, 3 meters high. But then, when you enter them, they are magnificent from the inside, because half of the synagogue is underground. So the Sarajevo synagogue is not necessarily underground, but somehow architectonically, and it still puzzles me, they attained this feeling that from outside the building is small and from inside it's huge, even without putting half of the synagogue to the ground. So you can see there are very few medieval synagogues that survived in Spain until this day, and one of them, two of them are basically in Toledo, and they are the most known medieval Sephardic synagogues. Then one is in Cordova, and another one is in Saragossa. And the Sarajevo synagogue resembles to a certain extent the synagogue of Saragossa. So we will be seeing the synagogue, so we will be talking about the synagogue on the spot itself. So there is no need for me to explain these things right now. Okay, So here you can see that there was actually no Jewish quarter. This is actually Ottoman Sarajevo, because the other parts of the city were developed later, and you can see the Jews lived all over. So you can see that in Gazi Khusrowbek's Mahala there were 20 houses with 74 people. In Ferhat Pasha's Mahala 56 houses with 168 men. Yagdizade Mahala, right, there were 23 houses with 63, or Hadeke Mahmudin Mahala with 26 houses and so on. So Jews, Mahala is neighborhood. The it's not a street. Wait, I'll explain. Usually there is a mosque, and then everything around that mosque is, so it can be, it's not that one street is in one neighborhood. No, one piece of one street, and all streets which connect between are one neighborhood, right? And that is called Mahala or Mahalle, or depends on pronunciation.
What language?
It's not quarter, it's Turkish, Ottoman Turkish. It's not, it's quarter, basically. It's quarter.
Is it men or all people?
Oh no, men, because this we know from the people who were paying taxes. So it's only male. It's,
men had wives and houses.
Yeah, of course. But we know that they were tax deducible, 74 tax deducible people. Okay, so this is Jewish cemetery of Sarajevo, and we will also be visiting it, and it's interesting because this shape is unknown from other places. I know you've been traveling a lot with Debbie. You've seen very you saw many cemeteries. That's why they call it ABC, right? Another bloody cemetery. So in any case, you will not see a cemetery like this one. Why? Usually, the stone covers the entire grave, and over here it's much smaller, and besides that it's not straight. It actually looks, if you imagine here a lion's head, it actually looks like a sitting lion, right? And there is nothing similar, and this is the type. In other words, in the Ottoman times, all the graves in Sarajevo Sephardic Jewish Cemetery were made like this. So we'll be seeing it on the spot, just like these monuments that you are seeing now. So I will not be explaining them. Okay. You can see today in Israel we have this huge disputation. You know, the Chevra Kadisha, which doesn't allow you to have pictures, and they say it's a Christian costume, and so on. Well, Sephardic Jews all over Ottoman Empire used pictures on graves since the time pictures entered the Ottoman Empire. Really. So it's very late.
Very traditional.
It's of course, because there was no photograph before that. But from the time there is.
It's not because nothing figural was on.
Oh, of course.
This is new.
This is new, but what I'm saying is that they saw it as totally kosher, and with all the rabbis that functioned here, nobody ever objected it, saying it's not the Jewish costume, or, and here, Muslims don't do it, and they don't do it by law, I mean by Islamic law. And the Christian Orthodox do it a lot, and Sephardic Jews do it a lot. So, you can see. Actually, why not? I'll show you. I don't know why this is.
We'll actually see it on the spot.
Yeah, we'll see it on the spot, but not really. Some of them we will not. So I just want to show you how Ladino functions. How you have some of the inscriptions in Ladino. Because when we get there, not everybody will see everything. So let me just see.
Yeah.
Okay. No, this was not. One before. No, it wasn't. No. Okay, so back to the list of the rabbis. So Chacham Tzvi was one of the first famous rabbis in Sarajevo, and as you can understand from his first name, he was Ashkenazi, because there were no Sephardim. Of course. So this guy is actually from Ofen, and he went to Salonika, so he's Ashkenazi born. He goes to Salonika, and that's where he learns in Sephardic yeshiva. And that's where he attains his title of Chacham, which is Sephardic rabbi. And then on his way to Amsterdam, he passes through Sarajevo, and this is still before the time of Rabbi Pardo, and Sarajevo doesn't have yeshiva, so they ask him to stay and serve as the rabbi of the local Jewish community, and he does so for a few years. And later, when he moved to Amsterdam, and when there was a huge disputation between the Sephardic and Ashkenazi community in London, because Chacham David Nieto of the Sephardic community in London said that Teva, nature, and God have the same gematria, right? If you add Ha to nature, Ha, Teva, the nature, and Elohim, God, they have the same numerical value, which means that nature is God and God is nature. And then the Ashkenazi Bedin went berserk, and they say this is heresy. And Rabbi David Neto said, well, maybe amongst you guys this is heresy, but I'm Sephardic Chacham, and for us this is normal. So they turned to the only Jewish authority in the world that knew both shittot, that knew both methodologies, which was Chacham Tzvi. So the Sephardim obviously called him Chacham Seri. So they turned to Chacham Seri to be the arbiter in this famous case, whether God is nature or not, or whether Sephardim are allowed to have different opinion on the very nature of God than the Ashkenazim. You can see here the signature of the Rabbi David Pardo, right? So it's only, he didn't sign with the full name, it's only Dalet and Peh. And interestingly enough, even in the abbreviations of the local rabbis, it's without the patronymics, because we are used in the abbreviation of rabbinical names, we are used to Ben, right? Ribi, Moshe, Ben, Maimon, Ramban, right? But here they call him Radaf, Ribi David Pardo. So they don't call him Radbiaf, Rabbi David Ben Yaakov Pardo, but they call him the title of the rabbi, first name, second name, Radaf. So, this is something, anybody from Tel Aviv? Yeah. So do you know in Yafo there is the street of Rabbi Yehuda Marguza? Yeah, well, there are only 3 mistakes in that name. First of all, it shouldn't be called Marguza, it's Meraguza. Meraguza, of course. And Raguza is Dubrovnik. But the problem is the rabbi was never from Dubrovnik. He's from Sarajevo. And his real name is Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, right? And when he decided, what's the place in America where most rich Jews go and spend their when they are retired? Philadelphia? Florida. Exactly. So we have to understand that for the Ottoman rabbis, the land of Israel was Florida. It was all within one state. Imagine Beersheba and Jerusalem and Salonika and Istanbul and Adrianopolis and Sarajevo and Belgrade. It's all one state. It's a huge state. So for them, this was not an endeavor which was connected to so many dangers. They were traveling within their own country, just moving to Florida. You have a better climate, you are closer to God. So most of our rabbis are not buried in Sarajevo. Most of our rabbis are buried in Jerusalem. And the same is true of all other Balkan communities. The rabbis, when they get retired, they sign a retirement contract with the community. We have a copy of the contract with Rabbi David Pardo, which says he will not serve any other community as functioning rabbi in Israel, and he will be praying exclusively for the community of Sarajevo at the Western Wall, and all the way he keeps the promise, the community will pay him annual pension. So, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi also went from Sarajevo to Jerusalem. But these are already times of Zionism. And he had this idea of purchasing the land and having Jews cultivate the land and so on. But obviously, he couldn't fly from Sarajevo straight to Jerusalem. So what he did, he went to Ragusa and bought a ticket on the ship that was going on to Israel. So when he arrived to Yaffle, everybody asked him, "Where do you come from?" And he didn't imagine that they were asking him where he was from, rather where he came from. So he came from Ragusa just now. He spent 72 hours in Ragusa. It was way too, right? And he told everybody that he came from Ragusa. And that's why they started calling him Me Ragusa. And then being the fact that in modern Hebrew you usually don't put the das, right? So it became Margusa. Okay, and so on. So it's not Margusa, it's Meragusa, and it's not Meragusa, it's Sarajevo. But besides that, everything is right. Yeah. So, okay, so this is, for example, the famous Rabbi Chaim Rabbi Eliezer ben Yitzchak Papo. Okay, so now everybody, yeah, I know. So Papo in Sarajevo is just like Cohen. Okay, so when we get to the Jewish Museum, we will see that every second person in the city is Papo. In any case, this rabbi is famous for quite a few things. One thing is he wrote books which are bestsellers in Israel today. These books are dealing with Musar. They are called, for example, Pele Yoetz, Ya'alezu Hasidim, Orot Elim, and really there is almost no year without a new edition of one of these books. They Emratzim Chazak, as we say in Hebrew. So, he wrote it. Now you can see that Pele is basically Eliezer Papo. Aleph Lamed, okay, are initials of his name, and P is his second name. That's the way the Sephardic rabbis gave names to their books. So you'll see, for example, he has a book of Alachot called Kitzur Shulchan Aruch called Elef Hamagen. Elef Hamagen obviously is coming from a verse in Song of Songs, but it's also his name, Elef Eliezer Papo. El Eliezer P Papo. Okay. So I'll just quote, because he had this very Ottoman Sephardic outlook or understanding of the world. So I will just quote the piece which I find most amusing. There is entry. The book is written in alphabetical order, so it's like kind of encyclopedia, ethical encyclopedia of Judaism. And then between other things he says, Ahavat ish ve'isha, the love between husband and wife. He says, a husband, our sages have stated that the husband should love his wife more than his own body. And then he says, what he is talking about. If the wife is careful and taking good care of her husband, it's only natural that he should love her. And mitzvot do not command us to do natural things. There is no mitzvah to breathe because you do it naturally, right? So what the mitzvah is all about? No, the mitzvah is about a hard wife who is not letting him rest, and he's cursing and making his life bitter, and then he should love her more than his own body. Why? Because she's helping him attain for his sins, and that way he will have a secure ticket to the world to come. And then he says, and this actually means that we should all only look for bad wives. But being the fact that not too many people can undergo such a trial, if she curses him, he will curse her back. And then he will find himself having two Gehinnom. One in this world, and another one in the world to come. Consequently, you don't necessarily have to look with candles for a bad wife, but if you already have one, you should be happy with your lot, because, okay. And then he says the love of the husband for his wife, of the husband for his wife, he says again, if he cares about her, and he loves her, and cherishes her, and so on, it's only natural that she should love him. And mitzvot are not about natural things. So the mitzvah is about something unnatural. And that is, if her husband is, how do you call it when somebody doesn't give money? Stingy. If her husband is stingy, and he doesn't bring any food home, the rabbi's conclusion is, don't worry, whatever he brings, that's what he will eat. He didn't brought any meat, he will not eat any meat. Don't worry, don't get upset. So in any case, he also says that Jews should not go to Western Europe, because Western Europeans do not wash their backs after using the bathroom. Rather, they use toilet paper, and consequently, they stand to pray when their bodies are dirty. So he was very Ottoman rabbi, as you can see, but he was also a teacher of the founder of modern Zionism, Rabbi Yehuda Alkalai, right? So Rabbi Yehuda Alkalai was born in Sarajevo, and he learned in Sarajevo yeshivot, and then he went to Zemun, next to Belgrade. But there is a river Sava between the two cities. So Belgrade was part of the Ottoman Empire, and Zemun was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the Serbs have already started their insurrections against the Ottomans. And Rabbi Yehuda Alkalai, just like Rabbi Yehuda Bibas, for example, from Corfu. Rabbi Yehuda Bibas from Corfu stated, we see how the Gentiles are taking their weapon and liberating their states. And until then the Jews will give their money only to establish learning houses, we should also liberate the land of Israel. So these were the political Zionism, unlike in the Ashkenazi world, where this was seen as a very secular idea that undermines religion. Within the Sephardic world, rabbis were barriers and harbingers of the Zionism. So his pupil, Rabbi Yehuda Alkalai, he started revitalizing Hebrew language as spoken language. He also believed, today there is no city in Israel which doesn't have a street named after Rabbi Alkalai, right? But people usually don't know why. So the guy established association which collects money from rich Jews and buys land in the land of Israel, but not for the elders to go there and pray at the Western Wall, but rather for young couples. That was his idea. And second of his, so he was traveling all around the Western Europe, trying to convince Western Jews to give money to help Eastern Jews move to Israel. In any case, he also wanted to convert Hebrew from sacred tongue into spoken language. And he has this idea also that te'amim, the cantillation marks that we use in Torah, should be used in modern Hebrew as interpunction signs. So instead of question mark or exclamation mark or comma or dot comma and so on, you should use te'amim. This didn't work, obviously. So here is Rabbi Alkalai, and here is Rabbi Alkalai with his wife, Rubisa. In Sephardic tradition, a rabbi is called Hacham or Rubi. So consequently, his wife is called Hachamesa or Rubisa. So this is Rubisa Esther, his wife. Okay, and I mean we have to end more or less. But this is the grave of Rabbi Moshe Danon. We will be traveling there. This is one of the few venerated saints in the Ottoman Jewry. Unlike the Moroccans, which, you know, it's unimaginable to have a Moroccan Jewish village or Moroccan Jewish city without 1, 2, 5, 10, 50 saints. Amongst the Ottoman Sephardim, this wasn't a case. There are very, very isolated cases. So in all of Bosnia and Herzegovina, there was one single grave of one single rabbi who was considered to be, which is place of pilgrimage, right? So obviously they had many rabbis whom they considered to be special, saintly. But this doesn't necessarily mean that once those rabbis were buried, people went to their graves to pray there and so on. But this was an exception to the rule, and we'll be traveling there to see the very grave. Now I want you to see two other things. This is one of the last Oriental. This is one of the last Oriental and first Western Jews in Bosnia. He's called Moshe Ben Rafael Atias, but he's rather known by his Ottoman nickname, Zeki Effendi. He was the last Jew in Sarajevo to write Persian poetry. He wrote poetry in Persian, right? And he used to dress the Oriental way, but he also had a modern Western education. And you will see the rabbis. He was not a rabbi, but he was he was Talmid Chachamim. And here you see Rabbi Avraham ben Aharon Kapon, and you can pay attention to something missing on his hand, which is So how do you say kippah in Ladino? You don't, because there is no Ladino word for kippah. How do you say kippah in Hebrew? Oh, that's not Hebrew word. That's kepele. So they converted the Yiddish word kepele into Hebrew word kippah, but originally there was no such a word, because there was no such a thing. So when they speak about covering their heads, they use the word kisui, rosh. And the Sephardim for generations have been using all kinds of turbans. And then kippah was unknown in the Ottoman Empire. Nobody wore kippah. Kippah is totally, the original name is Yavulke, and then you have the kepele, and the kepele comes from Slavic words or Slavic languages, and then it became Hebrew kippah. The Sephardim didn't have anything like that. They used turbans or efes. And then during the westernization, rabbis, the younger rabbis skipped to European hat. And they were wearing on the street European hat, in the synagogue European hat, but besides that they were not, at home, writing or whatever, they just didn't have anything. Now his father and his grandfather would have an Ottoman fess 12 hours a day, right? But he would wear actually a hat only when praying or walking on the street, not at home. Okay, and this is his synagogue, and we'll be seeing this. So, and one last thing. Here you see Ribi Yehuda. So you will say, well, it's not what's written over there. It's written Leon. So Leon is Yehuda and Yehuda is Leon. Why? Because Leon means lion, and a lion is a sign of Yehuda, Gura Yehuda. So any person called Leon, when he's called after Torah, he's called like Yehuda. So this is Rabbi Yehuda Leon ben Yosef Pinsi, and you can see him with all the insignia of, including the ring, with all the insignia of Sephardic chief rabbi. Now, many people don't know that during the Ottoman times, if a Jew would, Has v'shalom and God forbid, open the store on Shabbat, he would be taken to prison by Turkish police, because the rabbi was serving as a qadi for Jewish matters. A rabbi was an official Ottoman qadi for Jews. Qadi means a judge. Right. So, the communities needed to be extremely careful, which means that once certain rabbi attained the position of the chief of the Chacham Bashi, of the chief rabbi of that province, that actually meant that they cannot remove him, and Jews were not used to having unremovable rabbis. So the Jews would then first give him few years of testing period. And we have all of this in Pinkas of the Sarajevo community in the chapters which were transliterated before it was stolen by the Germans. So in any case, the community would test the rabbi for a few years. Then if they saw that he understands the problems of the community and he's human and he's not a fanatic and he's not this and that, then they would turn to the Ottoman authorities, and the Ottoman authorities would recognize him as the Qadi for Jewish matters, as a judge for Jewish matters. And then this guy had, for anything related to Jews, he had at his disposition the apparatus of the Ottoman state. He could use Ottoman police to make Jews great again. Okay, so thank you so much, and we'll proceed.